Welcome back to San Diego Solid State. This is part 2 of our two-part series in replacing the dial glass on a Pioneer SX-636 receiver. In part 1, we went through how to remove the glass intact and prepare for the new glass. In this video, we will actually install the new glass and finish up the project. All right, let's go over what you're going to need for this part of the project. So first, you're going to need your replacement glass. If you got it from us, it's going to look like this. It's going to come in a tube. Or if you remove the glass from another faceplate, based on the instructions from the first video, this is what it's going to look like, and you'll be reinstalling this in the new faceplate. You're also going to need some sort of adhesive. I prefer weatherproof clear silicone, just because I know it's going to work really well bonding glass and metal. But it doesn't really matter as long as whatever adhesive you're using is designed for glass and metal. You're going to need some way of applying or smoothing out the silicone in this case. I'm going to try this out. This is they call it a measuring syringe. If you have little kids, often these come in medicine for children, so you might have one laying around your house. And then just a plastic putty knife or something to spread the stuff around and keep it under control. You might also want some glass cleaner and a microfiber cloth just to clean everything up and keep it fingerprint free and smudge free. So if you bought your glass from us, it's going to come in a tube like this, and it can be a little tricky to pull out because they're packed in there pretty tight for shipping. I found that's the best way to keep it from breaking. So it's best to take off both ends and then push from one end to get it started. And pull it the rest of the way out. Pull this apart. And voila. Now you want to be careful not to put any fingerprints on it. It should come clean. And that's ready to go. With the glass that has lettering on it, you got to be really careful not to install it upside down. And I'm really bad at directionality and trying to visualize which way things should go. So I like to set it up so that my faceplate and my glass are both face up, facing the right way, and then flip both of them over like this. So that way I know they're both going in there the right way. All right, so there's a couple things I want to point out before we start gluing. One is you'll notice that along this edge here, there's no glue from the factory, and you want to avoid that spot as well. If you get any squeeze out over on this side, you run the risk of it squeezing out onto the letters, and then you're kind of done. So you want to stick to the top, the bottom, and then the far side. The other thing you'll notice is like this has glue all the way along. You actually don't need that at all. This is not a weight-bearing setup, so you just need enough to keep the glass from falling out, and the glass is not particularly heavy. So you'll see, I'll focus on a couple key areas around. There's a stop here in the middle. There's a stop here, and then a few spots along this edge. All right, so I'm going to start along this top edge. I'm going to focus on where the stops are. So I'm just going to put a little bead right in here, right along this. And then on this stop, put a little bit more in there. Okay, so I got my top covered. Now I'm going to run some along here. Now you can see this line where the edge of the original glass was. The replacement glass is going to be in exactly the same spot, and you want to kind of stay along that line. Now if you're applying the silicone or other glue with something that's a little bit harder to get such a fine bead, this is where you might come in with a scraper or some other tool, scrape up against that stop and this stop, because the top part is where you're going to have the most problems with squeeze out, because you can see there's only about a 1/4 inch of reveal here before you get into the glass. So these are the ones you really have to worry about. Down here, again, because of this trough, less of an issue. All right, this corner over here is your reference corner. If you want the button to be in the right spot, you got to make sure the glass is resting right up against this stop and then the stop up here on top. Lay it in there carefully, and then push up into that corner. Now, to avoid getting fingerprints on this, you can use a paper towel. Now you can see we got a little bit of squeeze out into the glass in this corner. We'll go ahead and deal with that tomorrow once it's dried. So just let it sit overnight, and then we'll move on to clean up and finishing it up and putting it back together. So it's the next day and the silicone is dried up pretty nicely, no problems. The only place I got a little bit of squeeze out is right in there. So we're going to take a look at that first. Now the best way to deal with this is with just a fresh razor blade. And you want to get in there, just cut very carefully right along the edge, saw back and forth a little bit, and then give a little scrape. Now I'm still seeing just a touch in there. I might try and get in there with a little bit of alcohol. There we go, that's much better. All right, so this is ready to go back on. You can see you got a nice clean lettering there. It's gonna show up really nicely against the black background. And so we'll go through how to put this back on right now. All right, so step one is to put the button sleeve back in. So do that first. This goes right through there. Attach that to the back. And you just slide this on. Just like that. Then with your Phillips screwdriver, these screws in here. I'll put the washers on first and get these started. Okay, and then you get your 1/2 inch deep socket. Snug that down real good. All right, so with knobs like this that have a black mark on them to mark what position they're in, they're always going to look best when in the up position they are 100% up. So the tricky thing is to try and line them up so that up looks up. So for switches like this that have a click, you basically want to turn it all the way over to the left or the right, but all the way over to one side, and then count how many positions it takes to get to the top. So this is all the way to the left is AM, turn it one click to FM, and then you know that that mark is supposed to be straight up. And then you can go and you can just eyeball it right on there. Now for things like volume on this model that don't have stops or clicks, the best thing to do is to try and line it up at either minimum or maximum. Just take a look at make sure you're lining it up with that minimum mark on the front. Okay, and then you just repeat that process for the rest of the knobs. All right, so that is done. And if you look over here, you can see the lettering, nice and clear. Thank you for joining us. I hope this video helps you enjoy your stereo a little bit more, and I hope you learned something along the way. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section. And if you need glass, take a look at the description. We'll have a link to our Etsy store there. And I hope you can continue to enjoy your vintage stereo for many years to come.